I'm Al with ZZPerformance, and today what we're going to do is show you how to measure the air gap, which is how far your throwout bearing is from being bottomed out when your clutch assembly is in its resting state. This is a common issue that we get asked about a lot, and it's one of the reasons that we have our throwout bearing spacer made, which is a 1/4 inch thick. The various clutches use different pressure plate and disc combinations, and you'll end up with a varying air gap depending on which clutch you're using. If some of them it is too large, and what ends up happening is your throwout bearing extends too far and will blow the seal out the end of it. But also there are certain clutches where you will not need to use it, and if you accidentally install that spacer when it's not needed, you will effectively put yourself into permanent neutral as soon as you bolt the transmission together, because the throwout bearing will bottom out and be pushing on the clutch fingers, keeping your disc from engaging. So the first thing you're going to need is some form of straight edge. You can find a piece of angle iron at a local hardware store really cheap. It doesn't even have to be angle iron. It just has to be something rigid that you know is pretty darn straight. I have modified this one to clear the edge of the pressure plate. I went excessive here just so that you could see what I was doing. The reality is that you really only need maybe an 1/8 inch of clearance here. So what you're going to do is take this straight edge and you're going to rest it on the clutch fingers without pushing down on them. And you can take a tape measure and you're going to measure the distance from the edge down to the block, and you want to make sure that you do have this bell housing spacer on the block. So what we have here, and you can check both sides, is right at 2 1/4 inches. So I'll mark that down here as our measurement B. Then you'll go over to your transmission with the throwout bearing installed, and it's going to be a lot easier if you have a friend to help you. So I'll hold this straight edge up against the mating surface, and then go ahead, Chris, have someone push the throwout bearing until it's all the way bottomed out, and then you're going to measure this gap here, which is 2 5/8 inches. So we'll mark that down. 2 5/8 inches. So now you subtract your B measurement from your A. So that is 3/8 of an inch. Okay. The ideal air gap that you are aiming for is somewhere around 150 to 200 thousandths, which in fractions is going to be around or a little over 3/16 of an inch. If we put the 1/4 inch spacer in here, then we would only have 1/8 inch left, which is 125 thousandths. And as the disc wore out, eventually you would get to the point where the throwout bearing would bottom out. So this is a situation where with a 3/8 gap, you do not want to use the spacer. If, say, this was a 1/2 of an inch, then you absolutely would want to use the spacer, because that is going to take your air gap down to about a 1/4 inch, which is within the limits of not overextending the throwout bearing.